Hi, my name is Paul Neale, and welcome to another How I Made It in 3ds Max. I've been in the animation industry for almost 30 years. I've worked on mobile games, AAA game titles, feature films, broadcast television, as well as architectural visualization, medical, military, and even aerospace engineering projects. Today I'm going to take you through ways of adding subtle animation to sets, giving them that extra depth and dimension for your audience to enjoy. Just animating the camera moving through it isn't enough. Having things blowing in the wind, water flowing, objects swaying, gives it that extra richness that you're looking for. And this is how I made it in 3ds Max. I'm just going to have a look at ways of getting our foliage moving just slightly to look like it's blowing in the wind and add a little bit of life to the set and make sure that it doesn't just feel like it's stagnant and stationary. To get started, we're going to have a look at some of the grasses and how they're being animated. Let's do an isolation of the objects here and show all of the hidden objects, and Alt-Q just to isolate them so we can see what's going on clearly. Now I have these bits of grass. You can see they're all nicely blowing in the wind. And they're even being controlled in a direction by this point helper. So if I rotate this and point the X vector in the direction I want the wind to blow in, you'll notice that the grasses are blowing in indeed that direction. Now I have some custom attributes on here that are controlling some of the values. So I've got a wind speed. So if I increase that, you'll notice that it's kind of, gets faster and whatnot. If I take up the turbulence size, maybe if I took it down really low, you'll notice that it's, got a lot of turbulence. It doesn't look so natural. So we're going to increase that back up again. And there's a wind strength that blows it in a direction. So we can, increase or decrease the strength of the wind as well for all of the objects that's using this method. We'll take a look at what's actually happening on the object. Now we have two things that have been added to this since the modeling was done in the previous series. I have added a data channel and a UVW map modifier. Now you can see that the UVW map modifier is up in the air here. We'll just look at it with show end result turned off quickly. And so we're not seeing the conform modifier. Now what I have is this UVW map applied to the side. It's mapped into channel 2, so it's a second layer of UV mapping instead of each one that is on each leaf. And it's a planar map just in the Y. This way we're going to be able to generate sort of a gradient from bottom to top, from black to white, to be able to multiply the motion so that it moves correctly only at the tips and not the base. Just turn on show end result back on with the toggle Alt tilde, and we have it back to being moving again. So let's have a look at the data channel. Data channel has a distort in it with a material we'll take a look at in a second that is driving that distort. So next we have a vector, and that vector is actually accessing this node here. And so it's node wind direction, which is our point helper, and it's pointing along the X. So you can also see that it's got a multiplication sign here, and that's because right-clicked and changed it to multiply. So I want to be taking whatever this distort is getting out of this material, and I'm going to be multiplying it by this factor. Then I've got a scale, and that's essentially being driven by our wind strength. It's pushing up and down this strength value, and you'll notice that I can't get at it right now. It's locked because it's been wired up to that parameter that I've added. Now I've got a vertex output. That vertex output is set to position and add. So it's adding to the position of every vertex in the model and pushing it in a direction down a vector that's being scaled and being added to the distort, the texture that's in there. So let's have a look at what that texture is that's being used. So that is what's being applied into the distort. And I'm using a multiply, an OSL multiply here. And to be able to sort of mask out from bottom to top, I'm using map channel 2. So that's this map modifier in channel 2. And I'm using a color curve. Now, if you notice, I'm only using the red output, and it's much easier to visualize just one of the channels. And if I take that and go and take, for instance, the very right-hand side, you can see I can change how the grass is bending over the shape of the grass, over the top to bottom. It's affecting the tips up here more than it's affecting the bottom, because the UVW map is just a linear from top to bottom on it, helping make it look a little natural. Now, what I'm multiplying together here with that is this noise. Now, I'm using a standard noise and not OSL noise, because OSL noise will be slower when it's having animation put in it. You know, the OSL shader is interpreted language, and it's going to be slower to calculate than a C++ noise that this is. So I'm using that. Now, to be able to control some of this, I'm using noise size in the noise. So if we look at the size parameter that's here, I have an expression in it, and it is just a straight up multiplier. So I could have parameter wired this as well, but I went down this road. So I added a variable to it, and that is attached to a constant, and that constant is the one that is in here, and that is our turbulence size, so size of the noise. The next one is the phase. So the phase of the noise. So the noise has got to be moving and changing, sort of shape. So the chunks of white that kind of come by allow it to be able to move in that area. So with a phase, I've got just a simple, expression that I've done here. I've got a multiplier again, and that represents again this wind noise speed that's going on here. You can see wind noise speed down below. I've taken F, so the frame we're currently in, and I've multiplied that with our spinner here. Now, the spinner needed to be such small numbers or else it was just way too windy. I just did an additional multiplier on top of it all, multiplying it by 0.01, so that, this doesn't need to be a tiny little value to work with. You can turn it up more, and it's going to make, more sense to the end user. So that is outputting this noise. Now, this noise is set to world XYZ, and it's just passing through the scene or changing, values with a phase. So anywhere that it's white, it's multiplying it by a value of 1 and grayscale. And so mixing those two together is allowing us to have that kind of control. So there's our wind now blowing around. All I need to do is, copy this data channel with a paste instance, and I just need to, have a UVW map in channel 2 that is, pointing up in the Y essentially, like it's being mapped sideways on the Y. So you can look at it just because it depends on which object you are on, how you modeled it. But as long as that's pointing up on the UVW map modifier and, giving us that gradient from bottom to top, we'll be able to control it. So we can now just simply set up other objects and drop in the data channel onto it, and away it goes. It'll be blowing around in the wind as well.